Joining me now, boy, was he ever made for such a time as this. Our very good friend, Stephen Yates, Senior Fellow at America First Policy Institute. And of course, he is an expert on anything related to the CCP, all things China, having worked in the previous Bush administration, also with Trump. And he's the chair of the China Policy Initiative for America First Policy Institute as well. Okay, so, Stephen, I'm so glad that you're with us. Thank you so much for being here. And I understand. I feel as though, this is just my take, I feel like they know a lot more than they're willing to say, obviously, understandably, and they would rather have people freak out over potential alien invasion than they would by thinking that this tensions with China have just increased by another step. I mean, is that kind of, because we don't have an effective communicator who can come out and make the country feel good. So this is the best they have.
Well, that's the sad truth. If the current White House spokesperson weren't so bad, Kirby would be one of the worst spokespersons we've ever had. And if either of them weren't in place, we've got a president who doesn't seem able to communicate, or a vice president that's able to communicate. And no one has really seen or heard anything from the Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense to kind of soothe anxieties or clarify what's going on. Kirby, I think, somewhat offensively appeals to his native anti-Trumpism by just saying, oh, well, these things happened before, but they were not detected by the previous administration, and we detected them. Well, you mean the ones that you tracked all the way across the Pacific and Alaska and across the continental United States, and it was actually detected by Montanans? It wasn't detected by you.
Yeah, it was a local reporter in Billings, Montana. And one of the explanations that I heard from DOD was that we have technology now that allows us to go back and look at any kind of radar anomalies to determine with new technology and means that this is what this means now. We can kind of go back in the past and look. And he fails to mention that. Is this, to you, is this a provocation from China, or is this, oh my gosh, all our stuff got caught spying?
Well, the first balloon very clearly was a provocation by China, in my estimation. These other objects, I guess as they're called, I didn't see them. I don't know what they are. And the government isn't really telling us very much useful information. In response, the Chinese are saying, but you Americans have been flying balloons over us for a long time. Well, that's news to me, and I find that hard to believe given how heavily surveilled China is. You'd think they would have popped a picture of a video of that kind of thing before. They might have made some propaganda value out of it. I really doubt their ability to avoid that temptation. So I think, unfortunately, we have an evil regime in China that's engaging in disinformation, and what should be our government engaging in at least misinformation by not giving the whole truth.
One of the things, we're talking with Stephen Yates, and you can find him at YatesComms on Twitter. One of the things that Kirby said, which seemed to confirm what we all have known, what you've known for a long time, is that China does have, as an extension of their People's Liberation Army, they have this program, their unmanned surveillance program, which can include these balloons. Now, to that point, back in July of 21. The War Zone, which is a military analyst site, they were saying that there was a gigantic hangar spotted via satellite it's in the Xinjiang province, and it's large enough to fit a, quote, Nimitz-class supercarrier inside with 100 feet to spare on either side. It's ginormous, and it's apparently all for the testing, the creation and testing of unmanned spacecraft, including the lighter-than-air craft. So that does seem like that all fits, correct?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's actually any secret about their mastery of use of drones and surveillance and AI, all courtesy by way of very lax Westerners who have allowed this technology to transfer, thinking they would get rich, but the Chinese just got more powerful and capable, that the Chinese look to go to space as a way of leapfrogging above the natural power and capabilities of the United States that military that they probably will never be competitive with head to head. That's why they engage in indirect, unconventional warfare. And so taking to the skies to harass, surveil, or otherwise is exactly what they would do. That form of air harassment is relatively cheap They don't risk a lot of casualties of their own. And frankly, if we don't get serious about it, we sort of need a Star Wars 2.0 to take our airspace a little bit more seriously.
And that's the thing. You never want to think that a geopolitical foe has greater capability than you do. China was very eager to paint itself as the victim after the first balloon in South Carolina, and saying that the United States just acted unreasonably and there was no reason we needed to be so hostile to their balloon. But correct me if I'm wrong, back in 2001, when there was a Navy surveillance plane, didn't they have a fighter, one of their fighter jets, come out and basically, I mean, they crashed trying to take ours out of the sky?
Yep, that was literally the beginning of my work in the White House.
Ooh.
That was on April Fool's Day, 2001. The pilot of that fighter jet on China's behalf was ironically named Wang Wei, make your own joke to follow. He flew that fighter jet into a lumbering EP-3. They held our crew hostage for 10 days and then sent the U.S. Pentagon a bill for the damage done to their fighter jet, pain and suffering, and also the hospitality extended to our crew. So China is familiar with politicizing and gaming these kinds of things.
So that sounds like we were pretty reasonable. We just took down a balloon. Apparently,
Exactly.
that's
And how were 1.4 billion people's feelings hurt by this balloon being taken down after that long, long journey? When I was a kid, when we went out to the playground to let a balloon loose, we would have been thrilled to know it made it halfway around the world.
right. What are they looking for? I mean, the first balloon going over Montana, and apparently from what I understand, they could control the maneuverability of this thing, I suppose, remotely, but it sounds like it was kind of a tough go at that. Were they actually surveilling? Do you think that they were just very blatantly surveilling our military sites, thinking that they would never be detected?
Oh, I 100% believe that. And why wouldn't they believe that? As I say, they've been flying drones. There are a lot of activists around the world that do the same thing. It's not just governments that do these kinds of things. And so I think when you have sensitive sites, you have to assume they're being surveilled. I would never, as a first assumption, say that a hostile power accidentally was going by to peruse. We don't really get to know all the technology that was active on this thing because it got shot down. But we used a Sidewinder missile on it. I mean, if we cared about it, I don't know, we couldn't have punctured it, let it have a slow leak and go get the thing.
Yeah.
But, no one asked me, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about on that.
This is, it's very interesting. I saw that when Justin Trudeau had tweeted that he had authorized or had called out the activity with NORAD when we took out, I guess this was just over the border. They had the third one over Huron, then the one in Yukon. That kind of surprised me that Justin Trudeau I don't want to give him any credit because I just greatly dislike him. And I also don't think that this is going to be a pattern with him. I think this is just a one-over. But at least they did sort of recognize the threat that this entity, and this is one of the three that they won't actually say what it is, that it posed. What does that tell you? Does that mean, I guess, that as woke as he is, there still is at least a commitment with the United States against this apparently growing threat that is China?
I'd like to believe that. There's also the political undercurrent where I wonder if he would have helped if there was a president in the White House that he disliked. And so the fact that they are on the same woke wavelength, maybe they were willing to work together to knock whatever this unidentified object was out of the sky. It was an established pattern that these things that went through Canada did not stay in Canada and wouldn't come to the U.S. And maybe he was sympathetic to have a low population area. The part that I am kind of fascinated by in the entertainment side of this is how is this not some kind of a climate or ecosystem threat to have these things fall down in the protected areas of Canada or other parts of North America? And why did no one have any empathy for the Atlantic Ocean to take this first thing down in bits and pieces? Yeah. We're sacrificing straws at Starbucks to save the oceans, but we're going to knock down some kind of a balloon satellite surveillance thing.
That's probably equivalent of a lot of straws.
There's just a whole lot of crazy on all this. So I think take a little entertainment value of it. But the sad part of it is we don't know very much about what has happened. Our government is not helping us know very much about what has happened. No one can really have confidence that they know or that they will tell us. Does anyone really believe that these 3 or 4 objects are they're only ones that are out there?
Exactly.
feeds fuel to every conspiracy that was ever made.
And there's so many, we're talking to our good friend Stephen Yates, there's so many inconsistencies because first they said they were afraid, when it went over the Aleutians, they were afraid to shoot it down as it got near, they could have shot it down over the Aleutians. They waited, I guess, for it to get to Montana and then go across the United States. At first they couldn't shoot it down because they were worried about debris, but I guess that doesn't apply with the other three. That is confusing. And then I wonder if the public had not found out by way of that reporter, the very lucky reporter in Billings that saw what he saw and took a photo and the story was born. I'm wondering if we had never found out about that first one, would these other three have ever been shot down? Because now you have Britain's prime minister coming out saying, yes, we'll use RAF, our Air Force to go and shoot down any kind of spy balloons. And everybody else is kind of getting on board with it. But would that have ever happened had we not had this first broken by a reporter?
I really doubt it. And that's actually one of the risks of the current approach. I mean, the regime media was ready and willing and able to defend the Biden administration deciding to just let the first balloon float with impunity. And they said it was all fine. The president himself said everyone was overreacting. It was not a big deal. But apparently someone in the White House disagreed. And now they're shooting everything down. And who knows, at some point when you just start shooting things down everywhere, you're going to make a mistake. And so I don't know why anyone would have comfort or confidence with any element about how this was handled. And we don't even know whether these other objects are from China. The first one obviously was. There's Chinese writing. They sort of told us. But the other ones, we don't even know it's from China. So the weakness of the first instance could be inviting lots of others to take adventure.
I know they had said previously that they had shot some, or they were preparing to shoot down some balloons. The one they said they didn't make clear that it was from the United States. Separately, it seems that they were accusing the U.S. since Joe Biden was in office of floating balloons over there, which I don't believe because I think that he's too sycophantic with Xi Jinping to do that. But now it seems like they want to try to get in on it too. Do you believe that that's just them trying to cover their backsides with us?
I do, but I think we should take up the bet and send 1 million Winnie the Pooh shaped balloons over China just to get under the skin of their dear leader who hates anyone who compares him to Winnie the Pooh. So I think we should double down on that.
I actually co-sign that. I think that would be nice. Yeah, just send that over and see how they react. Stephen Yates at YatesComs on Twitter. Always so good to see you. Thank you so much for your expertise on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana. Take care. Okay.